Hello and welcome to UELtras on Ranks FC, the show that walks you through Europe's most exciting club competition, the Europa League, and its new baby brother, the Europa Conference League. I'm Jack Collins, and as we head into the second leg of the quarterfinals of both competitions, I'm here to take a look at what happened last time out and the key battles which will define who goes through into those all-important semi-finals. So, without further ado, let's start with the Europa League, where, let's face it, all four ties are on a knife edge. It's incredibly interesting, but we started there last week and we're going to start there again. Let's kick things off with Atalanta versus Leipzig. Leipzig, I think, will feel a little bit hard done by not to have got more out of the home leg of this encounter, with a missed penalty and various strikes of the woodwork, including a late one from Dominik Szoboszlai, a header where you could see that he thought he'd won it. It was really upsetting for Leipzig, and you can see why they feel a little bit aggrieved. But that said, Atalanta had long spells on top in this game as well. They hit the woodwork in their own right, and with the score tied at 1-1, I think they'll fancy themselves to get the job done back in Bergamo, just as they did against their last German opponents, Leverkusen, in the last round. It was a beautifully balanced tie. We said this last episode before the first leg, and it remains so now. Although Atalanta, who are struggling in the league and out of their domestic cup, will now see the Europa League as their only real feasible route back to Champions League football next season. That, and what you'd imagine is going to be a fervent atmosphere at the Gewiss, might just give them the edge in this one. But for me, the key battle is between Teun Koopmeiners and Konrad Laimer. With Ruslan Malinovsky missing in the first leg, Teun Koopmeiners played a little bit further forward than you might have expected to see him playing for Atalanta. But I thought he was really impressive in that first game. He was unlucky. He was the man who hit the woodwork for Atalanta. He struck the post with a speculative effort, a little bit unlucky. Malinovsky might well return in Bergamo, but I expect Koopmeiners to keep his place in this side as well after he was rested at the weekend in the loss to Sassuolo. He came off the bench. But wherever he plays in that midfield, the chances are that he's going to end up dueling Konrad Laimer at some point. The Austrian is a staple in the heart of this Leipzig midfield, and his all-action, press-heavy style is absolutely crucial to the way that the German side operate. I mean, look, he's not quite as creative as his opponent here, but Laimer has had an eye for goal of late. He doubled his tally for the season in just 9 minutes a couple of weeks back when he grabbed a brace in the 4-1 win over Dortmund in front of the yellow wall, which you can imagine went down incredibly badly. But no, I don't think this battle is going to be decided on the score sheet. It's going to be decided in who controls this midfield. And both teams, as we said last week, employ wing backs. And considering the way that they both play, things are likely to be stretched, meaning that this midfield battle could be the difference between progression and a quarter-final exit. Lyon won, West Ham won then, and West Ham's win over Sevilla in the previous round, I think, had the Irons dreaming of Europa League glory, but they were brought back down to earth in the first leg here, where a wily Lyon side, comfortable in these latter stages of knockout European football, they took a tie, a 1-1 draw back from the London Stadium, and to be perfectly honest, I think they will see themselves now as favourites to progress. Much of that is to do with the fact that Moyes' side will be missing Aaron Cresswell. He was sent off for a last-man challenge on Moussa Dembele, the Lyon skipper, leaving the left side severely weakened ahead of the return leg at the Groupama. That's kind of compounded by the fact that Kurt Zouma went off injured at the weekend in the game against Brentford, the West Ham lost. We're not quite sure yet whether he's going to be back and fit for this one. He has travelled, but whether he's going to be fit to play, yet to be seen. Look, this was a game full of controversy, and the honours are equal as we head into the second half of the tie. West Ham are going to do what they did in the first leg in some ways. They're going to look to Jared Bowen. They're going to look to Michail Antonio to spearhead the attack on what will be another even contest. Both defenses can be got at here, and I do expect goals to be forthcoming for both sides. But whether the lack of Cresswell proves to be the turning point in this encounter is yet to be seen. And for me, that's where the key battle in this one lies as well. Partly is we don't know who Moyes is going to turn to replace Cresswell, but it's a good bet to assume that it's either going to be Arthur Masuaku or Ben Johnson, who came on in that first leg when Cresswell got sent off. The gaffer flitted between the two during Cresswell's injury during December and January, or they did finish that period with Johnson playing there in 2 wins back-to-back. And they moved him from right to left when Cresswell came off against Villa a couple of weeks ago. Even if Masuaku is the more natural option as a left footer, I probably edge it towards Johnson here. But whoever plays, is going to have to deal with the threat of Romain Favre. The winger joined Lyon in January from Brest, and he's mostly nailed down the right-hand side of their attacking trio as his own since then. He didn't start at the weekend. Tete came in, the man signed from Shakhtar Donetsk. He's been electric, to be fair to him. But Favre tends to start in that role. He started 9 of 13 games since he's joined, including all 3 in the Europa League. And look, whilst his output hasn't quite matched up to what he was putting up at his former club this season, it is easy to see why Peter Bosz likes Favre. He breaks lines, he shifts Lyon up the pitch into dangerous areas, and his final third combinations with the likes of Dembele and Lucas Paqueta can cause absolute havoc for opposition teams. Basically, the question here is, can any of Aaron Cresswell's replacements keep him quiet? Because if they can't, this could turn into a very tricky evening for West Ham. Over to Barcelona then, and in the first leg, Barcelona were given a real fright in Frankfurt. It ended 1-1. They were comprehensively outplayed for long periods by their opponents during the first leg of this tie. That they are still level is partly due to 2 things. 1, some wasteful finishing from Frankfurt, and 2, the fact that Barcelona are right now a force to be reckoned with, and they don't feel like they can be kept out. They will enter this second leg at home as favourites, as you'd imagine, but they've got to be wary here because Frankfurt's energy, their counter-punching style, those are the things that caused them problems in the first leg, and those problems could well be exacerbated in front of a home crowd who will expect Barcelona to dominate this game in terms of territory, in terms of possession. It just means it might open up for the lightning quick forays forward, the likes of Filip Kostic, Ansgar Nauf, who scored such a wonderful goal, obviously, and Jesper Lindström. Those are the transitions that Barcelona did really struggle with, especially in the first half of that game. With all that said, though, this Barcelona side feel insatiable, and they feel like they're pulling out results out of the hat. They were 1-0 down to Levante at the weekend. They gave away 3 penalties. They went 2-1 up, threw it away in the 86th minute by giving away another penalty, and then rescued things in injury time. Luke de Jong stepping up the 92nd minute to give them another win. I think you look at the attacking options available to Xavi, a crowd now fully behind him and his new project, as well as the possibility of his first silverware as Barcelona manager on the horizon here. You'd still be hard-pressed to bet against a Barcelona win. And I've picked out a key battle being Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and Martin Hinteregger. The revival of Alba under Xavi has been quite staggering, to be honest. Not in that there wasn't always a brilliant player in there, but I think if you told anybody that he was going to notch 10 goals and an assist in his first 14 games for Barcelona, they would have probably sniggered a little bit. But he has. And perhaps more interestingly, he's done so playing mostly through the centre in that kind of traditional number 9 role. Something very different to where he did thrive for a little while under Arteta and previous managers at Arsenal, cutting in off that left-hand side and causing havoc in field when he scored. He looks set to lead the line again here. He drew a rare blank in that first leg, partly due to Frankfurt's excellent defensive shape and marshalled by the 29-year-old Martin Hinteregger. At the heart of a back 3, Hinty, as he's quite affectionately known around Frankfurt, helped keep what has been an irresistible Barcelona attack, mostly, I think, at bay. And he's going to need another monster performance if Frankfurt are going to get through. Much of this does feel like it's going to be one of those attack versus defense matchups. There are going to be breakouts, there are going to be counters for Frankfurt, but a lot of this game, you'd imagine, is going to be played with Barcelona pinning Frankfurt in their half. So how this matchup between Hinteregger and Aubameyang plays out in particular could be so crucial to who goes through. And finally, in the Europa League, 2 Rangers who find themselves 1-0 down to Braga after the first leg. And to be perfectly honest, I think they're lucky to find themselves just 1 goal behind after a game at Braga's famous quarry where they were comprehensively outplayed for the majority of the 90 minutes. Braga had a goal chalked off. They were in the ascendancy for most of this game, but Rangers hung in there. And for that reason, they are still very much in this tie. A 4-0 victory at the weekend saw them get back to winning ways after a couple of defeats on the bounce, but Rangers are going to need to adjust to life without their all-time top European goal scorer, Alfredo Morelos. He's ruled out for the rest of the season, and it's interesting because Rangers' attack is kind of hardwired around Morelos. It's easy to see why he's been such a crucial cog for them, but they need to adapt that and change this style up if they're going to accommodate Kamal Roof playing in that central role. Look, the Ibrox crowd are going to be right behind them. Rangers do have the capacity to turn this around, but they're going to need to improve by vast amounts if they're going to beat a Braga side who have pretty much already secured their 4th spot in the Primeira. Look, Braga's manager Carlos Carvalhal said that they were the most attacking side in the Europa League left. And we saw that in the first leg. Not too many clear-cut opportunities per se, but actually the way that they stifled Rangers high up the pitch, the way that they forced high turnover balls, and Ricardo Horta was absolutely sensational in this game, pulling the strings everywhere. Abel Ruiz was the man who got the goal, but it was Horta who really stood out. And I'm intrigued as to how this plays out, because I fancy that Braga will think that they might well be able to get this done. And part of this is to do with the key battle here, which is Ryan Kent against Jan Couto. And look, in this first leg, Kent started brightly, got a couple of jinky runs straight away, and you were thinking, all right, we're going to see again this player who has lit up the knockout stages in this competition. But as the game went on, Braga started to snuff him out. And much of that was to do with Jan Couto, who started at right wing back. He's at Braga on loan from Manchester City. And the young Brazilian has been absolutely excellent all season. In Primeira, felt like he came really into his own as this game, as he grew into this game. He forced Ryan Kent to go backwards, and behind him, Fabiano, who played this kind of right centre-back role, he was on hand to deal with any flashes of brilliance where Kent managed to slip his marker, or Rangers started to break. And ultimately, Rangers without Morelos need Kent to shine. He has done in this tournament so far, but he lost this individual battle with Couto and Fabiano. Now, it is 2 against 1. We did think this was going to happen. Said so in the last week that Braga were going to double up because Kent has been so dynamic in this competition. But ultimately, he needs to start isolating them one-on-one and take them on if Rangers are going to turn this around. I think this one and that right-hand side for Braga, that left-hand side for Rangers, is going to be the kind of key moment if this one is going to turn around. Onwards then to the Conference League, where there were more goals shared around the 4 games, but there are still plenty to play for here. These tournaments are nothing if they are not steeped in drama to the last. There is no game of all 8 of these in either tournament that I think is done and dusted, which is incredible. But with all these goals shared around, we're going to start with the only 0-0 draw of last Thursday night, and that's PSV and Leicester at the King Power. They played out about as entertaining a 0-0 as you will see all season, to be honest, in the first leg of this game. Both keepers were forced into some impressive saves, and it was a compelling end-to-end battle that felt a lot like a basketball game at times. PSV, though, likely to be the happier side. They take that back to Eindhoven for the second leg, to a ground where they have been incredibly impressive this season. They've only lost 4 times in 24 games in the Philips Stadion. And whilst their league hopes might be slipping away 4 points behind Ajax now, they will still fancy themselves for a double, with a cup final to come later in the month, and then a tournament here that looks wide open, especially if they get through this one. But Leicester will also know that winning the Conference League is their only realistic route to European football next year. They're marooned in mid-table in the Premier League, too far off the pace to compete for the European spots. What we saw was a fevered atmosphere at the King Power, and I expect that to be upped again here at the Philips. Leicester fans really did get behind this one. They got really into the context. We had a lot of songs of "We're on our way to Albania, we're on our way." It was, a brilliant atmosphere. And the PSV fans, as usual, in real good voice. We expect something very similar in this away leg. Probably quite good-natured, but also quite fervent in those stands. But I do think PSV are going to have just enough to get through this. And the key battle I've picked out is Eran Zahavi against Wesley Fofana. Now, Zahavi is PSV's attacking linchpin, the focal point of this 4-3-3. He has his double threat, 16 goals and 11 assists in all comps this season, about 40 appearances. He's 34 years old, but he is still a wily old workhorse. He presses, he harries, he drops in to facilitate at times. He's a really lovely player. Once the skipper of Maccabi Tel Aviv, he's also skippered Israel, his country. He has been there and done it across Europe. Now he comes up against Wesley Fofana, whose return has been huge for Leicester. Brought a real sense of calm, I think, back to this team after 6 months out with a broken leg. And that partnership with Johnny Evans, absolutely crucial if they're going to survive this test. I just have a funny feeling Zahavi edges this battle and PSV edge this game. Let's go to PAOK against Marseille. And as many of you will have seen, there were plenty of fireworks both on and off the field at the Velodrome. But ultimately, Marseille had this game in the palm of their hand, and they have managed to completely lose control of it. Not only did they fail to kick on from 2-0 up, they let PAOK nick a goal back, got themselves firmly back in the tie. But then goal scorer Jerison was also sent off, meaning that he will miss this second leg. And the atmosphere at the Tumba is going to be, frankly, I think, apocalyptic. Not only was there ugly scenes involving both sets of fans running battles in the streets in the first leg, it was also rumours that AEK Athens, who are PAOK's rivals, had turned up in Marseille to help things out and get things kicking along. So imagine that went really well down with the PAOK supporters. But look, their home ground is famous for its atmosphere anyway. It was crucial in their wins over both Midtjylland and Ghent in previous rounds of this competition. Dimitri Payet scored perhaps the goal of the tournament in this first leg. Just an absolute ridiculous, perhaps his goal of the season, to be perfectly honest with you. An absolute arrowed volley off a corner, Scholes-esque, some would say. But the way that the ball just arrows into the top corner, it's like a laser beam. It's absolutely unbelievable. His renewed battle with PAOK skipper Vieirinha is one to keep an eye on. There is no Arkadiusz Milik. He is not going to be leading the line, and that should be a problem. And I'm really not ruling out an upset in Thessaloniki. Marseille should have enough, but I really wouldn't rule this out in this atmosphere. And part of this is the key battle here. The only one where I haven't picked players, the PAOK crowd against Marseille's hot heads. And we've seen this season Marseille games be abandoned, not necessarily to do with the Marseille fans in particular. Other teams seem to decide that when they're playing Marseille, anything is possible. And we've seen riots and pitch invasions and all sorts of things started on the pitch. It's been quite ugly, to be honest, at the Velodrome. But actually, Marseille on the pitch have a couple of hotheads in this team. We know the likes of Matteo Guendouzi. We saw Gerson get sent off. We know that Sampaoli on the touchline can also be a part of this. That things just can spiral out of control at Marseille and have done in the past. They just have some sort of force of habit of doing this. And ultimately, in this atmosphere, in what is going to be hostile, it's going to be absolutely fevered. You'd imagine that it is going to be covered in flares and fireworks, and the atmosphere will be red hot. Can Marseille keep their cool? If they can, I think they'll get through this. If this one descends into anarchy and chaos, I think Marseille might well throw this away. Roma against Bodø Glimt, 2-1 to Glimt in that first leg. And let's have it right. Bodø Glimt are turning into a bogey team for Jose Mourinho. They lost 6-1 away in the group stages. They lost 2-1 in the first leg here. They drew 2-2 at home in the group stage game. The Norwegians have his number a little bit. And a late goal in that first leg piled the pressure and the misery back onto Jose Mourinho. Look, Roma are 10 unbeaten in Serie A, and they have really found some form in 2022. But it just seems like people keep underestimating Bodø Glimt, who are the back-to-back Norwegian champions. They knocked out a resurgent Celtic side in the playoff round. They beat a very good AZ Alkmaar team in the round of 16. And now they have the advantage against Roma once again. Obviously, Roma are going to be favourites to turn this around at the Olympico. But it's going to be very interesting to see the turnout here. And if the Romanisti and if the crowd have finally come around to this competition, because I think winning this would mean a lot to Mourinho. It would mean a lot to his players. You know, it's a new trophy. He loves the idea of putting something new into the silverware cabinet, but also bringing his first piece of silverware to Roma. I think this will mean a lot. Ultimately, it's on the fans now to decide if they're going to pack the Olympico out here, if this is going to be one of those games. We saw them have that atmosphere against Lazio that spurred them on to such a win. We've seen the Roman crowd be so brilliant this season. Will they turn up for this game? And if they do, then I think Roma will do it. But the key battle for me is Sergio Oliveira against Hugo Vetlesen. And I thought it was really interesting the role that Vetlesen played in this first leg. He's played on the right-hand side of a midfield, so he can play on the right wing. And when Ola Solbakken was ruled out, I thought Vetlesen might play further wide. Instead, he kind of tucked in. And actually with Solbakken, who might well return here, we're going to see the combination start to play down those sides. There's overloads. And that's what created quite a lot of space in this first leg. Oliveira has his work cut out here, kind of dealing with this and trying to protect his left back and his left centre back in these areas where Glimt are starting to get those overloads going. He scored in the first leg, Vetlesen, a late run, a bullet header. That was the one that really did put the kind of knife in Roma hearts. But this is the kind of game and the kind of scenario that Sergio Oliveira was brought in for. Brought in from Porto on loan in January to add confidence and experience. We saw him be such a key part of that Porto late Champions League run where they knocked out Juventus. Obviously, he scored the winner in that game. He was brought in to add that kind of nous, that gamesmanship. We saw him so brilliant in that derby against Lazio. I wonder if he can continue to kind of provide that here and really start to turn this game around for Roma. And finally, Slavia against Feyenoord. 3-3 in the first leg. And frankly, the most entertaining game of last Thursday by an absolute landslide. It swung wildly from one side to the other. Feyenoord took the lead early through a beautiful counter from Luis Sinisterra. Then Slavia punched back to lead 2-1 before Feyenoord went straight back up there. The other end, they had a late salvo. They thought they won it 3-2, only for Slavia to score a ridiculous backheeled 95th minute equaliser. And the scenes were unbelievable. To be honest, it was pure adrenaline, pure madness. And it makes the second leg incredibly hard to call. But the only one thing I do know here is that I am going to be glued to this. Peter Olympique and Jirasaw made deep inroads into the final defense at one end. Sinisterra and Orkun Kokcu carved open opportunities galore at the other. And this is going to be in a cauldron at the Snowbow in the second leg. I'm expecting another classic, another high-scoring game. But ultimately, I do really think this one could go either way. I'm going to pick out as my key battle Jirasaw against Marcos Senesi. Now, Jirasaw is a striker, plays for Slavia. He is Nigerian, combines beautifully with his countryman Peter Olympique, but his pace is ridiculous, searing pace, and he got in behind a time and time again behind this Feyenoord line. Now Marcos Senesi is Feyenoord captain, and he is a young centre-back, 24 years old or so, who has become a real leader in this side. He's incredibly quick. The problem is that Jirasaw is so far above that they struggled a little bit with him. Now, Marcos Senesi scored. Actually, in fact, both of them scored in this first leg. And that leadership, that high line the Feyenoord played at home, did allow Jirasaw to get in behind. Now, I'm interested to see with Slavia at home now and Feyenoord playing, a little bit less attacking, a little bit less of an attacking now without their own fans kind of roaring them on to try and take that first leg lead. Will they sit a bit deeper? Will that stop Saw from having that space to get in behind? And how does Senesi marshal this back line in order to stop that happening? It was a massive battle in the first leg. It's going to be a massive battle in the second leg. And I absolutely can't wait to see who comes out on top. Right, that's it for today's UELtras. Thank you so much for watching as ever. Please do share this with your friends, anyone who you think might be interested in what's going to go down in the Europa League or the Europa Conference League tonight. Anyone who has a love for these competitions like we do. And please do hit that like and subscribe button underneath the video. Thank you for watching. We'll see you ahead of these semi-finals. Enjoy all the games. Take care.